This is a little thing here that I do ever so often, when I'm working with somebody, when we're doing electrical stuff about parasitic drains. And, a parasitic drain seems like a real simple thing that you could, deal with until you actually have one that you gotta fix the parasitic drain on. Have you done a parasitic drain?
I think I have.
You did? You done
I
one
still
or
need
two
two
of them?
more.
So, have you ever had one that would kill the battery overnight? You ever one that kill a battery overnight? Like whenever you go, you walk away and you come back and the battery's dead. You remember Judy had that on hers. If you, and there's a bunch of different, ways you got to get out of my chair, get somewhere else, get somewhere else. You always want to sit in that chair. That is not your chair.
It's cold out there,
You'll be in
y'all.
my way, so, all right. Anyway, a battery's like a reservoir of electricity. Get over there and sit down somewhere.
I'm gonna do that.
Just go sit down somewhere. All right, just go sit down, go sit down. The battery's like a reservoir of electricity. The electrons in the battery want to stay on the side of the plates. On one side of the plates, and the plates are swimming in electrolytes. You know when you pull the top off a battery, you look down in there, you see water. Have you ever heard somebody talk about putting aspirin in the battery? What does that do?
It puts the acid all the way back up on it.
Yeah.
Instead of putting
How does it do that?
I don't know, because of the soap, alkaline.
Is it because, what's it, alkaline or acid? Because it's
It's
opposite.
acid. Acid's not
Alkaline's
acid.
opposite of acid, right?
Yeah.
All right, and so how do you determine, what's the scale look like on that? If I've got some liquid right here, I mean, what would the pH level be if it was acid?
It would be over, I think it was up,
Yeah,
more than,
no, down, if it's 7, it's water. If you go down, it's acid. If you go up, it's alkaline. Anytime you're on one side or the other, that is out of balance and you can flow some electrons and all that. You ever stick a little bitty light bulb in a lemon and have a light bulb light on it? Yeah, lemons will light a light bulb, because they're acid, right? All right, incidentally, if you eat an orange or a lemon, you need to wait 30 minutes before you brush your teeth or it'll start softening your enamel and all that. But when they get to the side where they want to be, the battery's dead. The battery wants to be dead, right? You know that, right? It wants to be dead, so it's going to be dead if it can. If you make a path from here to here, then the electrons are going to flow until they get all where they want to be. Now, we're going to say they want to go to the negative side. Who cares which is which? It doesn't matter. You can't see electrons anyway. All right, so let's turn the battery around so the ground is at the bottom. On British cars, what they call the ground? Anybody know? Earth.
Earth.
They call it Earth. All right, let's say each chamber is perfectly sealed, right? So that no power can move unless there's a connection between the plus and the minus side. Those are the big poster terminals you can see. Now occasionally you'll have something that will short out in here inside the battery and the battery will kill itself. I've also seen other times whenever somebody would pull up here on a vehicle, shut it off, and you go to start it, and it wouldn't start, and like if you could get the tops off of it, you get the top off and you go to turn it in one cell just boiling up a storm and the rest of them are not doing anything. I also parked one time at a little place where we were playing ball when the boys were young. I parked this little Nissan Sentra we were driving out there. Everything was fine, parked the car, got in it, when it started up, the battery went boom! I mean, I might have exploded. Blue pieces of plastic acid all over the place under the car, left us a foot. I had to call somebody to help me. All right, so, because I didn't plan to have a battery blow up on me, Another time, my Explorer, I was over there, I think you were still over there. I went over to G-Tech, and I told somebody, I said, bring my Explorer in, I'm gonna change the oil on it today. And so he comes out there and he said, what's the trick to starting it? And I said, ain't no trick to start it, you just turn the key and start it. I mean, And so he's used to Charles Hudson cars where you gotta push a button and flip a switch and tie 2 wires together like they do in the movies. But anyway, so here he goes.
Boy.
I went out there to start it and it was just as dead as it could be. It was like there was no battery in it whatsoever. And so I had a little jumper thing that I hooked on it and I drove it back over here and I got a fresh battery. Well, the battery that was in it wasn't that old, but it wasn't bad on it. All right, but anyway, these are the big posts of the terminals you can see right here. All right. Now, the electrons want to go where they would rather be on the other side of the plate. So when we charge the battery, we're forcing them to go where they don't want to be. It's kind of like a windmill pumping water uphill into a big tank. It wants to go back to where it came from, but it can't unless you provide a path. So if you put it way up here in a tank, you ever notice how they put water towers on hills? The reason you open your faucet, it's not because somebody's pumping the water in there, it's because gravity's pulling it in there, right? That's why a water tower is tall, that's why it's up on top of a hill. And that's why artesian wells are always in a valley. You don't see an artesian well on a hill, it's always in a valley. All right, so the electrons want to go where they want to be. So here's the battery. Battery be like a storage tank, and this is the battery. See, all this be the battery. So the water is only to go back down into the ground. But the windmill pumps it back up there. Here's your battery charger right here. See? You start thinking about it like that, it starts to make a little bit more sense. There's also this Army Men model that some people use and all that kind of thing. Some people use a, water wheel. There's a whole bunch of different ways you can do it, and I don't know which way is the best, but I kind of went this way. When a path is provided through a load, so the electrons can go where they want to be, the work is done along the way, like a water wheel. So every electrical load on the vehicle uses some electron flow to do the work and make magnetism, produce heat, light. Some electronic components have capacitors. That's a little bitty battery looking, there's a little can, and it keeps juice for just a second. And here's one right here. That's a capacitor right there. You might notice it's even got the negative side marked negative. And whenever you put negative here and positive there, and you hold it there for a second, and like on this thing right here, you can actually take your meter and put your meter there, and it'll actually show you some juice that's in this little thing. But it discharges really, really fast. And they're used for all sorts of stuff in electronics. And in your old point distributors, there was one in there that looks like a little firecracker, but it grounds the distributor. It's got a wire coming out one of the points. All right, some electronic components have capacitors, like I just showed you there, and I didn't want to make sure I didn't forget anything. Batteries that are totally dead can be charged backwards. We used to have that whenever I was at the gas station, and Farmer Brown would take a battery out, and he wouldn't pay maybe it was completely dead. He wouldn't pay no attention which way he's hooking up the trickle charger, because he'd be in a dark place, and he'd hook up the trickle charger, and then when he went to put it back on the tractor, because of the diodes in the alternator or whatever, it tried to spark, realizing, oh crap, I charged the battery backwards. So he'd bring it to the gas station, and what we would do is hook a light bulb up to it, and we would just let it pull it all the way down to where there was nothing in it, and then we'd hook the battery charger up, and we'd charge it back up the right way. So that's kind of an interesting thing. How many of you guys ever seen a generator, one of the old long generators on an old car? You ever seen one of those? I mean, not an alternator, but it looks almost like a starter that's got a pulley on it. Volkswagens had them. They had a generator instead of an alternator for years after everybody else had alternators. But on a lot of the old generators, when I'd replace a generator on one of the old cars, you had to polarize it when you put it on there, or it would start charging the wrong way. You know what I'm saying? So they just make sure it was, and it had an external voltage regulator and all that kind of stuff too. Anyway, we had to charge it back up that way. Now, from GM, when is a battery dead? Using up about 40% of the total available amp hours will usually take a fully charged battery to a no start condition at a moderate temperature of 25 Celsius, which is 77 Fahrenheit. Put another way, for a typical battery in a storage situation, depleting the available amp hours by 20 to 30 amp hours will result in a no start. And most folks like to refer to cold cranking amps in a battery, and that's what we like to measure. A good tester can tell you how many CCA a battery has left in it. Batteries tend to lose their ability to store power over time. This is true of every kind of battery, even those in hybrid vehicles. You know the little thing we hook up and we push the button and tell us how many cold cranking amps it's got? That thing costs about $350 or something like that. And it's not a bad idea to have one of those in your back pocket everywhere you go, so you can check everybody's battery. I don't think there's a phone app for that though. All right, here's the amp hours and cranking amps. Two different measurements. 120 amp hour battery can deliver 1 amp for 120 hours. Now remember this, because there's going to be a test on it. There'll be a pop test, or it'll be part of your midterm final or something like that. 2 amps for 60 hours, or 3 amps for 40 hours, or 4 amps for 30 hours. Get it? Can you remember that? Do you need to take a picture of that with your phone?
Oh, you just remember 1 amp for 120 hours, all you need to know.
Then you can go down the list, 2 for 60, 3 for 40, 4 for 30. Cranking amps is the number of amps a lead acid battery at 32 degrees can deliver for 30 seconds and maintain at least 1.2 volts per cell. Okay, 1.2 volts per cell is how many volts for the whole battery? How many cells in these batteries?
6.
6, so what's 6 times 1.2?
6 and more. 7.2. No. Seven point two.
Yep, 7.6. That sounds right, doesn't it? So, and I'll tell you something else too. Back when that Ranger's running, whenever it hadn't been NOAA'd, NOAA that one. But anyway, that Ranger out there was, when you're spinning it over, if it had like about below 7.5 volts, it'd sound like it's spinning real good, but the engine controller said, I don't see enough voltage, I ain't gonna fire the injectors at all, so you can just sit here and spin me all day if you want to. But it wasn't operating the injectors, so there wasn't enough voltage. Think about that. The first thing you need to do when you're working on any car for any kind of a problem at all is make darn sure your battery is healthy and you got good connections. Because a lot of times, so this buddy of mine that works over there and does a lot of transmission work at Ford Place said they worked in a transmission shop, and they beat their brains out on that thing for a long time in a Power Stroke diesel. And he come up there and he fixed it by cleaning the battery terminals. That's all that's wrong with it to start with. That dirty
That's
battery
like you
terminal.
telling that dude that diesel could flood, and he said no.
Yeah, no, yeah. You can flood a diesel. Reserve capacity is the number of minutes a fully charged battery at 80 degrees Fahrenheit will discharge 25 amps until the battery drops below 10.5 volts. Now, if losing 40% of the amp hours would drag this battery below the point it would start the car, you can see how a parasitic drain, even a small one, might be an issue. So if you pull it down to below the starting level, you know, don't you just let it when you get in there? Yours was doing this, wasn't it? When you get in there and you have to jump it off. You know what Jennifer got really, really good at? She could jump a car off like no man's business. She knew how to do that. But we put our battery in there, and a lot of times the battery will be what the problem is. Well, I've got a story to tell about a Mustang a little bit later if I don't forget it. All right. Some electronic modules on newer vehicles, late 2000 up, have capacitors that need to charge up when a battery is first connected. Capacitors and other stuff in there. A capacitor is a little tiny battery like what I showed you. And it's stored to charge for only a few seconds, but it takes a little while for all of them to charge up. Keep that in mind before you start removing fuses. On the hybrid vehicles, when you pull the little service plug out, what you're supposed to do is give the capacitors time to bleed down, because they've got big monster capacitors in there, and you just blow your hand clean off if you touch them whenever the capacitors are still charged up. Big old capacitors like what you see on an AC unit. There'll be about 4 or 5 of them in there, all stacked in there wired. All right. So keep that in mind before you start removing fuses, because if a really good way to do it, if you can get a scope with a inductive lead and put it around there, and you can look at your scope pattern and then start pulling fuses until it drops, All right. Okay, here's a generic layout. I drew this myself on paint. I can really do stuff on paint there. All right, the battery feeds an underhood junction box with large fuses, small fuses, and some relays. Each large fuse may feed several smaller fuses in the interior box. So I like to start out by pulling the big fuses. I'm going to pull the big fuses and see if which big fuse causes my lead to go away. Now, how many of you guys know how to use one of those little meters to measure amps? When you set the meter and you put those leads, let me see that meter. I'm always doing this. I do this every single time. When you take that lead right there and you put it in this place right here, that meter becomes a jumper wire. Would you take a jumper wire and hook it between a positive and negative battery posts?
Yep.
You would not. You would, but because you like to smoke and smell the burning rubber. But anyway, on this one right here, if you leave that like that, and somebody else comes and picks it up, and they're not really at the top of their game that day because maybe there's something else on their mind, they're liable to take this and hook it to the battery to see if it'll, oh, crud. And then you might see all these little meters I got around here, these little cheap meters I got, with a little X over the 10. Which means they'll do other things, but they won't measure amps anymore because somebody has fried the thing on the inside. And these right here aren't fused either. So the, whatever, is cooked on the inside of it. Now this meter right here, it's got a little light in here and all that. It came from Harbor Freight. It cost about $5. A fuse, like what goes in one of those dadgum fluke meters, costs about $10 for a fuse. And you can go through 150 fuses really, really, really fast because everybody goes, pop, sorry, I need another fuse. So we don't do the fluke meter thing around here, right? All right, so I ain't got nothing against fluke meters. They're just too expensive for teaching purposes. All right, and I like for people to be able to do this instead of an auto ranging meter will confuse the crud out of it if you don't know what you gotta look at that little thing on the end where it says M or K or just ohms or whatever. Long and short of it is, you take this, you put it there, you set this on the amps, you put it between your cables if you've got one pulled off, and you watch what your current flow is. It ought not to be over 50 milliamps. Can you remember that? 50 milliamps. That's 0.050. 0.050 milliamps. And that's when it's set like that, and you got it set on the amps to read and all that stuff. Okay. So, enough about that. Always remember it's a jumper wire when you do that. When you've had the battery disconnected, you insert your meter, you gotta allow the capacitor's time to charge up. This can take an hour sometimes. Connect the meter to, that's why an inductive clamp's better, because you're not unhooking anything. But you can do what you gotta do. Connect your meter to read amps and then go to work on another job, wait a while, and so. Alright, so we measured the amps here. See how we unhooked the big battery terminal? Measured the amps right here. We unplugged that one. And we found out as we followed it down that we unplugged, in other words, this one was feeding several fuses. And when we got over here and we found out that after we unplugged these 3 fuses with that one back in place, that that one was the one, and it was feeding this box right here. And I've actually had some of them come down, the box will be leaking a little bit of voltage, or it'll have a relay closed or something, and that kind of stuff. That's something I used to see fairly regular on those. Now this is a fairly common procedure right here. Let me see if that's a video. I don't know if that's a video or not. Is that a video?
Yeah.
I think it's a YouTube video and it may not load. But anyway, that's what we were doing right there. You can actually see, look at it, it's trying to go to YouTube now.
Pull it up so we can see it.
Why don't you just be still? Yeah. Okay, this one here has a draw. We got that meter set up to read how many amps is going out of the battery. She's got a problem. Well, after we pulled all the fuses, what we found out was when we pull the stop lamp fuse, the draw goes away. That went to 120. That's the preponderance of the draw. See what it did there? What it is in the stop lamp switch, or stop lamp fuse feeds besides the stop lamps, because they're not on. Now we don't want to be loading another video here, so let's go back to our PowerPoint. Alright, now then. We checked the Mustang that was having issues with the dead battery in the morning, disconnected the positive cable and then put the meter in there. We just left it there for a while. We read a considerable draw, but when we left it for an hour, the draw was gone, because everything charged up and it was all just fine. The end of the story was the battery was killing itself overnight. All we had to do to fix that was put battery in. Now don't change the battery first, because they're going to be upset if you change the battery and the battery wasn't what was wrong with it. Also, check the little sticker on the battery and see if it's under, you know, if it's a 3-year free replacement battery, then you may have one like that. Something else you need to know about batteries: if you run batteries down and charge them up a lot, if they're not a deep cycle marine battery, you're going to be replacing the battery before long, because it ruins it. And a battery's like a reservoir. When it starts out, it may have 850 cold cranking amps. Next year, it's going to have 750. The year after that, it'll have 600. It's eventually going to get down to where it ain't got enough. And the old rule of thumb was 1 cold cranking amp per cubic inch. That used to be what it was. You know, that's what we thought. And I'll tell you a little more about that in a minute. So you drive the vehicle, operate all the options during the test, then turn the key off, wait for all the modules to go to sleep. Like again, it may take an hour. So you got this stuff going on. Alright, so another really good way, you can measure the voltage drop across each one of the fuses. I don't know who came up with this, it's a pretty good idea. If you got any current flow at all and there's a connection, you're going to be dropping a little bit of voltage. But you got to put your meter on the lowest setting so it'll be real sensitive. And if the fuse has got current flowing, we'll have a measurable voltage drop to cross it, and the rest of them won't. And so you can put it on the lowest millivolt scale and put the test leads across the fuse like you see right there. Sometimes you pop them little covers off, which is real aggravating on them daggum fuses, and you can check those the same way. An inductive meter around the negative cable can read current draw without unhooking anything, but you still got to isolate which circuit's the guilty one. Positive cable will be tougher to probe this way. Too many branches. We actually had a Buick in here one time that killed a battery. I hooked it up here, and I'm watching it up front while Zach was out there, you know, pulling fuses everywhere. And there's fuse panels under the seat and everywhere on these cars. You know, they have one under the hood, they have one under the dash, they'll have some under the back seat, they have one in the trunk. You know, you got to be able to, you know, find all the fuse panels. And whenever he finally pulled the radio fuse, which usually on a lot of the time the radio will be what's killing it. Even if the radio's never been changed out with an aftermarket radio, the radio is really a, you know, something that kills it a lot. You got to keep the door of the vehicle open to gain access. This may keep interior circuits live and drawing current. So you don't want your dash lights drawing current, because that'll confuse you. In that case, do what you gotta do in order to trick the door switches. Some are built into the door latch. Sometimes you may wanna pull that particular fuse as for the first part of your testing to make sure it's not causing it, because sometimes the trunk light or glove box light will be on. Another good way is thermal imaging. Check for current flow without disconnecting anything. Is with a forward-looking infrared camera. You can get one of those for your phone, by the way, a couple of $100s. I got one. And you just put it on your phone and you can basically do that. Also, if you're looking for a fugitive in the jungle and you're helping the sheriff's department, you can say, there he is, right down there by the water. All right, if a vehicle's been sitting for a while, like several hours, there shouldn't be any warm fuses or relays. Now, whatever you got your little crosshairs on, it's gonna tell you what the temperature is. You know, if it's cold outside and you're checking it, it'll be a little easier because everything is, you know, whatever is heated up like that, you can say, well, golly, that relay, they're hot and the rest of them aren't. This thing's been sitting here 4 hours. So good likelihood that's probably gonna be it. Now, that relay may be 80 degrees and everything else may be 40 degrees. Or everything else may be 60 and it may be 80 because that forward-looking infrared camera is gonna scale itself. You will see vehicles with this issue. Get used to it. Get good at it. Every time the scariest thing in the world is that whenever you're supposed to know what you're doing and you've managed to get hired somewhere and then they hand you a ticket that you're terrified. Oh crap, I don't know what to do. They want to have an idea that at least you have an idea what you're gonna do. One of the first things I like to do, if I'm checking one, and we've seen this here before, I disconnect the alternator. If I can get to it. I'm talking about if it's got a little plug going to it, unplug the alternator, sometimes that kills it, right, you know right then what it was. Because the alternator, the voltage regulator in the alternator be doing it. I've also had them where I unhooked a big post on the alternator. And it had, you know, like we had diode in there to pull it through. In fact, I've unhooked that one. And the alternator might be putting out just fine, but it will be killing the battery because it's drawing, you know, current back through there and all that. They've got any module on today's network intensive vehicle, find all the dadgum fuse panel. Don't wing it. You don't wing it, do you? Do you look stuff up or do you wing it? Huh?
I normally look it up.
Okay, well that's good. You need to look, and you're pretty good at it. That's the end of the presentation. Tell me something that you know that you didn't know when you came in here.
What an inductive meter was.
An inductive meter is a good way to go. Now, be careful. Watch this. Be careful when you're doing that, because I'll tell you why. If you go somewhere and you buy an inductive meter, let's make sure that inductive meter will do direct current. Because sometimes you may see a really cheap one somewhere and say, hey, I'm going to buy me one of these, and then you find out it's only for alternating current. Now, what's the symbol for direct current?
DC. Well, it's gonna be straight lines.
On your meter. It's going to be a line, which, well, let's see what it shows on here. This one here just says DCV. If you're looking at alternating current, you're going to see
AC.
a wave on your meter. You may have a little wave. If you're looking at direct current, it's a line with some dashes under it, but they're all straight. Okay, so make sure that you're looking at direct current, not alternating current, because that'll mess you up. Make sure that you know when you're checking anything with a meter, you know whether you're measuring alternating or direct current. Like on an inductive crank sensor, like on this crank sensor right here, if I was going to spin that over and I was going to see what kind of voltage was there, how would I set my meter? Alternating current, what should I expect to see? 5, maybe 6 if you're just spinning it over, like that kind of thing. And you know, be aware of all of that stuff. Now, if you don't know how to use a meter, or if you're scared of it, I need to know this. Okay? I mean, if you don't know how, because a lot of times whenever you're doing your final exam, shut up your mouth. When I'm doing a final exam with people, and you remember the final exam where I make you go through every part of your meter in about 7.5 minutes. You got to do everything your meter is supposed to do, and you got to know how to do it. And some people just get absolutely terrified because, you know, when I'd see these people, I'd say, I need you to wire this up, and they start putting the battery, both sides of the battery to each side of a switch. And I say, hold on, stop, you don't know what you're doing, you know, put the meters down, put the leads down, lean back, you know, because whenever I was doing a Skills USA contest one time for a local thing, these guys were, some of these guys would take the power from my plug box, and they go to hook it to each side of a switch. What happens then? The switch becomes the load, or the one of the wires does, then you turn on the switch, the smoke goes away. And we've had a little, and I'll tell you something else too, a little piece of wire that long if it burns inside the vehicle, it could fill the whole cab with smoke. One little tiny piece of wire. And just because you got a whole cab filled with smoke doesn't mean the whole wire harness is burned up. You're probably gonna find one little piece of wire, maybe that long, it's got insulation melted off of it. But that smoke's poison, so roll the windows down and get out of there. You know what I mean? So. Anybody got any questions or comments? Anybody just want me to shut up?
You was gonna tell us a Mustang story.
That was it. It was on there.
Oh.
The 2010 Mustang story, yeah, the 2000, I forgot whether it was in there or not, but the 2010 Mustang story, we had it parked right out there and it belonged to Renee, you know, she's the PR lady. And she was over here taking some pictures. Hey, can you check this out? My battery's always going dead on me when I leave it set. And when we hooked it up, we saw a draw, but I said, let's just walk away. Don't start it. It's a 2010 model. We walked away. My pickup started drawing, killing battery. My gray 2007 Ford pickup, it started killing battery one time. And when it started killing the battery, I hooked my meter up to it out there and let it off. And it actually, I pulled a fuse 20, I think it was, in the dash or whatever, I can't remember. And when I pulled that fuse, it killed it, and that went back to the instrument cluster. So I had to replace the instrument cluster on that vehicle. And the instrument cluster I got was a remanufactured one from Ford. Ford parts are guaranteed for 2 years no matter what. I mean, unconditional, unless you shoot it when you're 38 or something. So that battery, about 3 months later, I mean, that cluster, it started killing the battery the same way the first one did. And so I went ahead and put another cluster in it, and it's been okay ever since. But the long and short of it is, sooner or later, you're going to have to deal with this, so make sure that you don't, I mean, take this seriously. This is not one of those things that I'm telling you that you'll never have to do, right? You know that, don't you know it? All right. And so, all right, that's all for today. I didn't put a test on the end of this, but I will try to hit you with a really hard pop test on cold cranking amp hours, and have you explain resistances and bad, and you know, what did it? Big Billy ran over young George because Vicky grew weed and all that. You know, you're gonna have to know that and all that. So anyway, end of story today. Short one.